Hello, welcome to Lessons Learned. I'm Sherry, and this is Monday Quilt Chat. I have this little chat every Monday. Comes out at 6 a.m. every Monday. That is Eastern Time in the United States. So wherever you are in the world, grab your favorite drink and sit down and chat with me. Or at least you'll be listening to me chat to you, I guess. So we'll just act like we're in the same room and we're just having this chat together. That's kind of what the feel I want to give for this episode of Monday Quilt Chat. So this past weekend, when I left you on Friday from the Finish It Friday show, I didn't do a whole lot other than I put something on the long arm, and I did my aqua squares quilt. I'm not going to spread this out and show you just yet because I'll be talking about it on Friday. So this will be a finish for me on Friday. I do not have it bound yet, so by then I should have it bound and I'll have a complete finish to show you. But I was just dying to get this little quilt done, and it's just going to be mine, and it has minky backing. So stay tuned Friday and you'll see more details on this. So I worked on this off and on all day on Saturday. I had some other things I needed to do on Saturday, as I always do. But I did make some time for some sewing and managed to get that. I believe I did get it finished that same day. I had a pretty long pause there for a while, but I came back to it and got it finished. So it wasn't too huge of a quilt, 60 by 72 and a half or something like that. So it wasn't huge. It's just that I had to kind of stop and start on it. But I was anxious to get that one out and get it done. I hadn't long armed anything personally for me very big for a long time. I think the last thing I did was the apple, the wall hanging, which was just a small project. And I did have my long arm meeting on Saturday at my local quilt shop. There weren't very many of us there at all. As a matter of fact, it was just 3 of us. But it is canning season. People are working in their gardens. They're harvesting and canning and freezing and doing all of those sorts of things. Things that I probably should be doing, but don't. We didn't have a garden this year because we had some construction going on our property, and it took up some of my gardening area, and I won't have to relocate the garden if I'm ever going to do it again. I should do a garden. Not a big one, but something, you know. I think everybody should have a garden if they have some space to do it in. Not everyone does, but if you're fortunate enough to have a little patch of ground, you should put something in the ground, grow it, and eat it. So yeah, that's where everybody was. But I did share my apple wall hanging, and we talked about that for a little while. And the other lady that was there, oh my goodness, she puts everyone to shame in how many quilts she does. And she brought with her a literal wagon load of quilts. Not all of them were completely bound and everything, but she had free motion quilted them with her long arm. And she had one quilt top that was huge, made out of batik, that was beautiful. And I should have got a picture for you. I really need to remember to do that when I have that meeting. Get some pictures and show you guys what projects that the others bring. And she probably had at least 4 other quilts that were long-armed and other projects that she had going on. So both big quilts and little quilts, probably more than that. She probably had 6 or 7, I'd say. So I said, you did all that since last month? Because we have the meeting once a month. And she says, I did that last week. I was just like mind blown. How do you do that? She says, well, you should see my house. So maybe that's what it is. And that's okay. That's okay. I recently had to break down and give my house a deep clean because I had been neglecting it for so long because of our hobby here. So anyway, I was looking at my journal from last week, and I don't have I have everything on here that I did, and you know how my week starts out really strong, and then it just kind of goes down to to a smaller amount of things. Doesn't mean I didn't spend as much time that day. It just means I didn't do so many different things. But I did get to the berry wreath piecing that I wanted to finish. That one last set of squares that had 2 flip and stitch on it, stitch and flip on it. I did finish that. So now I still do have all my blue ones to do. And then I got all of my aprons done, as you saw on Friday. I got all of those done, and I got all of my scraps processed from those. So there was 12 yards of fabric out of my stash. That was 4 aprons, and it's because it's lined. It's a lined apron, which makes it a very nice apron, and you know, you use a lot of fabric. Very good for those 1-yard cuts that you have. I did, of course, the shark projects, the pin cushion, the little wall hanging that was crumb pieced. I did some cleaning in here this week. I did some cleaning and decluttering and a little bit of rearranging. So the sewing room looks really good. And I did some decor changes. If you haven't noticed, Blue's behind me. I don't want to run over him. I took my little monthly squares down that I had, and I put this one, which goes well with this one. Both of these are selvage projects, sewing related. And what else did I do? I just changed some of this fabric out that I had here just to see something different. I moved Miss Honey Sews over to the other side of the room, and I don't know, I just kind of went through some things. I went through all of my charm packs and arranged them by company. They each have their own little band around that's unique to that company. So that way, when I go to reach for something, I can look and see if I have some doubles or even triples to make a quilt out of. So all of those are over there on a shelf, kind of like this one, but just a tiny bit bigger. And so, yeah, I feel satisfied with everything that I was into this week. And I kept up with my sew-alongs, the Pat Sloan Block Wednesday, and also the Star of Wonder. You saw all that on Friday. So, I don't really have anything to talk about as far as upcoming projects. I'm still plugging along on those. I'm trying to, manage what I have right now. As I always mention, it seems like I have something I haven't worked on for a while, and those are still the same. But everything's kind of moving along the way I need it to. So I'm not ready I am ready to start a new project. I'm always ready to start a new project, but I'm restraining myself from starting another project until I get a little farther along on the ones I have. And by the way, how are you doing on No Buy July? I have still not bought anything. I'm expecting nothing in the mail. No, I do have a fabric swap that I did with someone, so there was no buying involved in that. Yeah, I think I'm still on track for No Buy July. I haven't bought anything. And even when I was in my local quilt shop for the Longarm meeting, I did browse the fabric because I'm looking for something to finish a project with, certain line of fabric. And I thought while I was in there, I'll see if perhaps they had it, because they do have some older lines. And this was from a couple years ago. So I didn't find it, thank goodness. If I had found it, I was pretty set though. If I turn the corner and I find that fabric that I need, I'm just going to let it sit there until August, and then I'll buy it if I decided I still needed it. But I didn't see it, so a little victory there. So I hope you're doing well on it. I like hearing from you, those of you who put in the comments saying No Buy July is still going well, or no, I had to buy this, or I went to this event and I just had to. Yeah, it happens. It's not a big deal. Cutting back, not just simply completely not buying anything, but even cutting back counts. So, and if you can't do that in July, there's a lot of sales in July, that's fine. Go ahead and do do what you need to do. Pick another month if you want to. Make it no buy August or something like that. But I think I'm going to stick with the January and the July simply because those two might be actually the most difficult months, because seasons are really drastically changing, and the temptation is to grab all the new, or actually all the old stuff that they're clearancing out, which that does make it a little bit harder. So if you do it on a hard month, it might be easier to control yourself on some of the easier months. So that's what I'm going to do. If you all want to jump on board with me on those months and do a no-buy month, I think that's when I'm going to just continually do those. But it's just a fun thing to support each other. There's no rules for anybody. I'm not setting any, hard and fast rules. But my personal rule is don't buy any new fabric. Only if you have to buy something, whether it be a notion or even fabric, to finish something that you're making for someone. Sometimes there's urgency involved in some of the projects that we do. So, you can't just say, oh, I can't buy this month. I can't finish the project for the person. No, that's not what I mean at all. And, there's equipment failures, and you have to get, parts for your machines, or you need some sort of notion that you're out of. I mean, if you use starch on everything and you run out of starch, you've got to get starch, right? So don't take it as I said so and you have to or you lose. It's not like that. This is just a support group for you to abstain from buying new fabric during that month. So I hope you're doing well. I'm trying to set the example, and so far so good. All right. 2 weeks, was it last week on Monday? Yeah, it was last week on Monday. I asked for questions. Ask me anything that I feel like I can answer, whether it be sewing and quilting related or not. And I thought I would go through some of those questions. I may not get through all of them. I might save some of them for another Monday quilt chat and just kind of mix them in with the regularly scheduled things that I do on Monday. So that was the Monday quilt chat of July the 8th. I asked, do you have a question for me? And I'm just going to go down through here and see what you have asked me. Okay, someone here says, this is from Deborah. And some of these names are a little cryptic, so I'll just say what your YouTube handle is when I get to it. But this is from Deborah, and she says, I would love it if you talk about labeling our quilts. I find that when I'm finished with a quilt, I have difficulty going through to the label. I know that is important. Do you have any tricks for easygoing labeling? Well, I'm not much better on it. I kind of get caught up in it trying to make the label, and I have a supply of labels that I like to use. Let me get that and I'll show you what I do. I have this pretty little box called Labels and it's just a kind of smallish, and I have pre-printed labels in there. All the labels that I have are in here. Someone sent me this one, Snuggle Often. I might ought to put that in this quilt right here, because this is going to be my snuggle quilt. I'm going to leave that out. So you can sew those into your binding. You're going to have to do your binding anyway. So if you have some little ones like these, let me show you what else I have here. Even if you don't do a detailed label on the backing, you can put, some other little thing in your seam. It doesn't have anything related to you is the problem. It's just a little token of a crafty item that you made. So there's that you can do while you're binding. Now, I tend to put the label on after the quilt is quilted and bound. Just somewhere in the lower right back is usually where I would put it. And I would use something like, I like these. The plainer the better. But I like something about this size. And I'll just go ahead and put some stabilizer on the back of this. And a lot of times I'll use the Heat and Bond light, and I will just, you know, put it on raw edge and then just kind of do a leaf stitch around in embroidery, hand embroidery. Or you can turn it under and whip stitch it on. But either way, I find it better to go ahead and write what you're going to write on here first. Because once it's on your bumpy quilt, your quilted quilt, it's hard to get your penmanship goes down about 50%. So, you know, I will take this, and sometimes if I can, I'll even make it smaller. You know, like I wouldn't need to use this border that's on this one. I could fold it down to like this and this, you know, cut it down or fold it down. Either way, you're going to have to hand put it on, either just needle and thread or do some sort of embroidery thing. But the actual label, I just write with a Sharpie, like a fine point Sharpie, because Sharpie doesn't tend to wash out very quick. Yeah, I know there's different pens out there you can use for that. I have one of these calligraphy pens. It's a Zig from Zig Memory System, pigment ink. I have this one, and it has a tip like this, which is what I usually use. See how it's kind of flat, and put it on my forehead. See how it's kind of flat and then tapers? That one works really good. And then here's a big one. If you want something in bold type, you might say you can use that in. So this is a very good pen. It's a calligraphy pen. And there are others out there like this that are marketed towards quilters. But I'm not opposed to just using this kind of Sharpie, which is, you know what it is. Put it on my forehead again. It's just a little fine point marker. That's what it is. So that works too. So whichever one I happen to grab. I kind of like this one a lot, this thin end of this, because when you write with it, it just kind of, it looks like, it makes you write at like a calligrapher does. So Blue did something bad with his foot. His little foot is hurt. I think he's either got a burr in it, he stepped on something that's stuck in it, or something. So I'm gonna have to deal with you, aren't I? Poor little fella. Look at him. He needs a haircut so bad. I'm sorry that hurts. Here. Let's see if you can lay down a little bit longer. There you go. Lay down. Lay down, buddy. We'll see how this goes. Maybe he'll forget about it for a minute. So that's what I have to say about labels. And like I said, I admit I don't put labels on like I should. If it's a commission job, I usually don't put a label on. I'll ask them sometimes, do you want me to sign it? Do you want me to put a label as to who it's for? You know, that sort of thing. But as for me, just doing my quilts that have no specific person in mind as the recipient, I haven't gotten my labels on them yet. I'll just be perfectly honest. So you can kind of keep them on the sidelines. When it does come up that you're ready to give it to someone, then you can make your label then. I guess the important thing is to make sure you make the label. So you and I both need to work on that, I guess, Deborah. And I'm sure there's a bunch more of you watching that, you know, are in that same boat. If you're one that is very diligent about making your labels and labeling all your quilts, congratulations, especially you people with embroidery machines. That makes it a lot of fun too. Let's do another one. What's Sandy? She says, what's the difference between printed muslin versus other printed fabrics? I don't think I know. Printed muslin, now that could be muslin fabric that has went through a printing process. Or it could be just a regular cotton that's made to look like a muslin. You know how muslin has that little brown flick in it that makes it look real natural? I really don't know. I probably should have researched that. I might come back to that for you, Sandy. Anne was asking for a charm square box. I do not know of any. I might have to do some research on that and come back to that question too. Okay, here's one from Marge. She says, if you're quilting a smaller item, such as a placemat in lines, like straight line quilting, do you sew all the rows in the same direction, or do you sew one line starting at the top and then the next line starting at the bottom? And yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I tend to go down and back up for a couple reasons. I feel like if you go back up to the top and come back down, your entire thing is going to wander off. You know, it's going to get a little more skewed if you start at the top and keep going from the top. If it's just a small mug rug, you probably could, if that's your preference, and it wouldn't, what is the word I'm looking for? Drift. It doesn't drift as much on super small items. A placemat, I probably would go, you know, back and forth for that reason, and also for the reason of speed. You know, it takes an extra few seconds to not tie off, that's a long arm term, to cut your thread and go back up and start again and go down, and, you know, moving your project around and all of that. So I probably, in most cases, would go up and down, up and down. Once you trimmed your quilt off, all those turnarounds will be gone, for the simple reason of the drifting. And I don't know if that's right. Somebody else probably will say, no. You have to always start from one end and do all your lines that way. This is my experience. I've done it a lot, and that's just what I've come up with. It's the best for me to get a good result. Okay, this is a good one. This is a fun question. This is from Sandra. And she says, when you have a quilt block that you would like to make multiples of for a quilt, but do not have yardage requirements to do so, how do you determine how much fabric to accomplish it? She said this may be a broad question to answer. Well, not really. I just kind of look at it, and from the measurements, you usually have, you know, your finished measurement. So I kind of look at it as in percentages or fractions, where you can see how many different prints were used in it. Let's say there was 5 different prints, and you have this area of 60 by 72. Well, you can actually calculate how much area is that, what percentage of it is this color, and what percentage of it is that color. It is an estimate, for sure. There's no way to exactly determine unless you want to, you know, maybe print it out and just literally, you know, measure exactly how much of this color and that color and that color is in the quilt, and then blow it up to the size that you want to make it and figure it out that way. Nobody's going to do that. No one. I don't think there's anybody that's going to take the time to do that. But you can estimate, you know. This isn't an exact science with quilting. You can add to and fudge around a lot to get the result that you want. So I probably would do it that way. I would take a good look at it. How many different fabrics did they use? And how big, what is the area of the quilt? And then divide it out in the how many ever different colors you want to use. And that should give you about, you know, your yardage. You're going to have to consider the width of the fabric you're using, which is mostly 44, you know, in doing your calculations. It is math. It is a lot of quilt math, but it still, even at that, is only going to be an estimate. So just get more is the only thing I can tell you, is just get more. And I've come to learn over the years that, you know, you need a good 3 to 5 yards for a background. If you've got a pattern that has a very distinct background, you're going to need between 3 and 5 yards of background. So the other colors that's left after you've figured that amount of area for background is going to be considerably less. It could be fat quarters of each one of those colors, depending on how many colors are in it. So that's another thing. If there's a lot of colors in it, maybe a fat quarter bundle and then a 3 to 5 yard cut of background will get you your project. But you're never going to, you shouldn't really expect to try to get it down to the minuscule math, you know, because we can do stuff with our scraps. No, you don't want to buy a ton. You know, you don't want to go buy, oh, I'm just going to get 5 yards of every color. That would be wasteful. But, you know, fat quarters, and that's the good thing about fat quarters, is instead of buying quarter yards, you have more area to work with your quarter yards, with a fat quarter. So a fat quarter bundle, you know, look and see how many different colors are in there. Is there 12? Is there 10? Is there 15 or more colors and patterns in there? Fat quarter bundle would probably be your best bet. And then your big chunk of background. So I'm finding that you know, you don't really have to think about it and do all the math that much if you work with a fat quarter bundle. And you're not going to have that much left. The worst that will happen is you'll have some small scraps from those fat quarters. Make your little 2.5 inch squares and make a quilt like this. Or you'll have complete fat quarters that you didn't use. So those can go into your stash by color and you can use those for other projects. So that's, I don't want to get into the real nitty gritty math. Usually doing it that way will give me enough. And even if you buy, you know, let's say your quilt is 60 by 72, probably about 3.5 to 4 would surely get your background. If it's bigger than that, go up to 5. Maybe that would be a good starting point, I guess. But yeah, I mean, unless you don't want to waste anything, you're going to have to get down and figure out all that math and geometry. So that's what I would do. Stick with a fat quarter bundle and a big chunk of background. And then you can wait until you're done to get your backing that you need, measure that and see how much yards you need for that. You usually need somewhere around 5 to 7 yards for backing. Okay, I think there's some more here, and then I want to save Anne's and the other question. There was another one about a surge protector that I want to get a little more versed on before I answer it. But I hope that gave you some helpful information that you were looking for, and maybe it helps someone else on here too. So thanks for those questions. I really like doing that. And if there's more questions, put them on this episode, and I'll start making that running list. I'm going to make a note of the ones that I did not finish today on last week's Monday Quilt Chat, and we'll just kind of keep that going, and I'll include 1 or 2 or 3 each week. So that'll be fun, won't it? And I'm sure all of you will have some opinions on what I thought about it, and put those in the comments too. You know, if you've got a nifty way to do any of that, please share it with all of us. And it's fun to go and read the other comments too. So after you read your comment, come back into the video after you put in your comment. Come back into the video a few hours later and see what else is in there, because you might find answers to your questions in there. So that's what this week consists of on questions, and we'll just keep doing that. I don't think I have anything else I wanted to share with you other than our art quilt. So stay to the end so you can see what the art quilt is and what the details are about it. It's a cool one. This is very vintage. I'm going to put a picture right here. It's called Starlit Skies, and it's a biggie. It's 92 by 108. And notice that black background. Starlit skies. This quilt picture she found on Facebook was the perfect solution for all of Carol's scraps. She ordered the pattern from Primitive Gatherings and started cutting for a while. But she wanted to have the 5,752 pieces cut before she went south for the winter. The most time-consuming part of the project was the tiny triangles in the cornerstones. This was displayed at the Peacemakers Quilt Show in Marshfield, Wisconsin. And the pattern was Starlight Skies by Primitive Gatherings. So she called it Starlit Skies. So this is really neat. I don't know if that's muslin or what it is, but it looks like it, and it makes it look vintagey. And that is giving me an idea for my next quilt like this after the burgundy square one is done. Maybe I will want to do one that is with muslin squares. Now this one is done with a lighter color square with the scraps, and then the muslin strips, which I don't know if they're muslin, it might just be a beige fabric, some blender, is what's in between the blocks. But I think I would like to do a muslin tiny square quilt. I'm thinking about it. Alright, so that is all that's going on this week. I hope you were encouraged to get your week started today and just get those projects out and keep working. Do something big today. Do something big. Get something big out. Even if you need to do a big cleaning of your sewing room, do that. Because Monday's a good day to do that. If you've got the time, if you're not working, and you've got extra time today, then do something big. And that just gets your week started off really good. Alright, I will see you back here on Wednesday for another stash busting / scrap busting project. I have something in mind. I'll try to do what I intended to do this past week if there's no storms, because it's going to involve the long arm. But don't worry, watch it anyway, because you can still do this project without a long arm. Alright, have a great week. I will see you soon, and that's it for today. Bye!